Default state because I just had a baby. So when I said that I was going to Baroda for this event,
Okay.
my wife was really angry.
Oh.
तुम्हें तो सोने को मिल जाएगा. But yeah, it's good. It's good to be here. It's incredible to see so many people turn up for a literature event because I started writing when I was in college in 2008, and in 2008 itself I heard the words for the first time that no one reads books and books are dying.
Okay.
And now it's been 15 years, and after 15 years I see so many people turn up for a literature event, so it's great. So thank you all of you for coming for this event. It's great.
So this is the first edition or the first season of Vadodara Literature Festival, and such a great turnout definitely is very, very inspiring. And your presence indeed will inspire a lot of students to become writers, or at least to explore this avenue of literature. Thank you, Durjoy, for being here. My first question to you is: you've been writing about romance, but do you think romance can survive in a hookup culture? अबे वो क्या, हम सब साथ में ही हैं इसमें.
I don't think that, I find it a little bit demeaning to say that we are living in a hookup culture. I think we are still living in a culture where people are trying to find love. It's just that in today's time, because of accessibility, etc., it becomes easier for you to hook up before you fall in love. So
Right.
what used to, I remember I have gotten so old that whenever I talk about my college, it feels like some other era, but it was. So when I started dating people, what used to happen is that you used to look at someone, and one of the biggest achievements of a guy's life used to be, which now I know that is stalking, is मुझे उस लड़की का number मिल गया.
Right.
It used to be one of the biggest achievement for guys कि मुझे उस लड़की का number मिल गया. What used to happen is that you used to start texting, you used to tell them that, okay, this is who I am, this is the section that I am in, and this is why I'm texting you, etc., etc. This texting used to go on for like months, and then maybe you would meet. And in a lot of cases, you would decide that you're in love before you even meet that person,
Yes.
which is obviously very problematic,
Yeah.
because you're just like, this is the only person that you're talking to.
Yeah.
So it's very easy for you to fool yourself that you are in love with that person. So now I think there is a problem of choice. You can open an app, you can start swiping left or right, whichever way you swipe, and then you can find, oh, there are so many people. So there's a problem of choice, but there is a positive side to it, saying that now you know what you want. Because you meet so many people, you can say with some level of certainty that this is what I don't want in a relationship. Like terms like red flags did not exist.
Yeah. Red flags.
Did not exist. when
Yeah.
we were
About
growing
even
up.
10 years back.
It was not in our vocabulary.
Yeah.
Or terms like this is toxic,
Yeah.
not a part of our vocabulary. So I think youngsters these days are in a much better space because they might cycle through more relationships. But I think once they are in a relationship, they have filtered out all the toxic relationships and red flags, etc. So whatever relationships they do get into, I think they will turn out to be more meaningful. I think there's a tweet that I read that someone had lamented that why can't our love stories be like our grandmothers? And someone replied to them saying that your grandmother wasn't educated, she had no job, she could not run away, she could not go back to her family. What she could have done, what could she have possibly done but stay in that
Stay there.
relationship?
Yeah.
So now people don't have that foundation. They will only stay in a relationship if there is love.
Right. Okay. So good point. So people stay in a relationship these days only if there is love, because there, as it is, so many options and so many choices that people can make. Fair enough. Moving on. So if I talk about writing in particular, in an era where 30-second reels sometimes too much to consume, and we want to just swipe in the 5 second or 6 seconds that we consume, do you think that writing a book or writing a series of books, how relevant that remains?
As I said, no, I started writing in 2008, and since 2008, people have been telling me that please don't write books because books are irrelevant, books are dying, no one's going to buy the book, etc., etc. And for the longest time, I used to believe it. And I did not start out writing books because I wanted to sell a lot of copies. I did not even think that writing is a good profession. I still believe that writing is a very risky profession. So if I, if if the current Durjoy could travel back in time and meet younger Durjoy, I would say, please don't be a writer. Right? It's extremely risky. It was only because I was young and I was reckless that I could like take the plunge and say that okay, I'm going to write books for a living. Writing books has always been risky because it's the slowest form of entertainment. Right? When you read a book, you have to give it so much to the book for it to be enjoyable. For a television show, it's okay. I mean, you're watching it, you're getting spoon-fed all the images, you're getting spoon-fed all the emotions, and then you have to watch it. If you don't like it, you can switch. Right? With the book, it comes with the added guilt of, now I have bought this book, now everyone has liked it, now I also have to like it, and now I have to finish it. If I don't like it, I'm not going to buy another book. So there's a lot of pressure that comes with reading books anyway. So all these years I have been living through all these points in the cons section. Books should not be read because of A, B, C, D, and the list has been going on. And Instagram is like a huge time killer, and not for others, for me as well.
For all of us.
I mean, I have made a conscious choice of not going on Instagram. Right?
No,
I
you keep posting reels.
I keep, yeah. So this is what I was about to post this story. So my Instagram, from like 2 hours a day, I've gotten it down to like sub 1 hour, which is I think which is decent.
Yeah.
And I wanted to post that. Look, guys, this is a medium which I used to sell my books, also earn some money from influencer type things that I do, and I still spend less than 1 hour. So if you're on Instagram, please spend less than 1 hour. There is no point of you spending more than 1 hour. So earlier I thought Instagram still was still made a little bit of sense to me because there was a sense of engagement, etc. Because you were following people that you wanted to follow. So if I liked the books of say John Green, I would follow him. I would look at his posts, and I would comment on it, like, etc., engage with him. Now what happens is I don't go on my timeline. I just go on that reel section. That now you better entertain me in the next 5 seconds or I'm going to swipe up.
True.
And I'm on both sides. I'm creating content as well and I'm consuming content as well. But I have realized that you spend 3 hours on Instagram, right? And you spend 3 hours on even a bad book, not a great book, right? Even a bad book you spend 3 hours. At the end of the day, you would never come out of your doom scrolling and say that I had a nice day. No matter how funny the reels might be, no matter how informative the reels might be, it would be very fleeting. But if you read a decent enough book for 3 hours in a day, you'll come back and you'll say, I did something today. There is a sense of achievement that comes when you're, or even a sense of entertainment. I mean, my books, I mean, they're fluffy, right? But when you read it, I mean, it makes you feel something. Reels. So this is a digression, but when I started selling my books, and because I was from an engineering background and no one expected me to sell books, a lot of people who were in the literary world, they were confused that why is Durjoy selling so many books? I mean, he should not, because his English is not that great. His command over the language is middling. Then why is he selling? So a lot of these literary guys, they decided that, okay, Durjoy's books are relatable. And that's why they are working. Like the character, you as a young person, you can relate to this person, and that's why he's selling. So, and because these guys were in the publishing industry for the longest period of time, I was like, okay, maybe these guys are correct. And I used to say that in my interviews that my books work because they're relatable. But it's only after Instagram came that I realized that my books are a little bit more. So, what is relatable? Say you see an Instagram reel about a content creator moaning about कि हाउस हेल्प ने आके फैन ऑफ कर दिया, रिलेटेबल कंटेंट,
Yeah,
ठीक है,
relatable.
राइट, कि हम सबके साथ होता है, हमें बहुत
जी।
गुस्सा आया, इसने फैन ऑफ कैसे कर दिया.
जी.
Now books take it a small step ahead of that. What books do is they remind you of a behavior that no one else but you know about yourself. When you read a book, you're like, मैंने इस चीज़ के बारे में किसी को नहीं बताया, इस राइटर को कैसे पता है? So that is not relatable. That is, you recognize your behavior in a fictional character and you feel that I am not alone. That
Okay.
मैं जो सोचता था कि सिर्फ मैं ही सोच सकता हूँ इतना weirdly,
पर
So,
कोई और भी है मेरे
कोई
जैसा
और भी है,
weird.
और मतलब ये राइटर सोच रहा है तो मतलब और बहुत लोग होंगे मेरे जैसे. So this is what I maintained that. So since that time I've stopped saying that my books are relatable. I say that there are behaviors in my characters that people find recognizable,
Yeah.
and hence my books make my readers feel less alone in the world.
Wow, how nice, yeah. That's very well said. So, but coming back to something that you said earlier, you say कि एक दिन में सिर्फ 1 घंटा Instagram यूज करना चाहिए. For how many of us is it possible? Can I have a show? अबे झूठ मत बोलो, हाथ नीचे करो. सिर्फ 1 घंटा एक दिन में कैसे पॉसिबल है? तो पॉसिबल नहीं है. But if you have achieved that, I think that is an achievement unlocked.
I mean, I genuinely think that you should spend less than 1 hour because it's not adding anything. And you know, I'm the kind of person who has spent like 3-4 hours on Instagram. And I'm not a student. I'm like a guy with a wife and like 2 kids and like an entire family, and I am spending 4 hours on Instagram. It used to, I mean, when you're spending your time, when you're scrolling, it doesn't feel like 4 hours.
Yeah,
But-
that's the problem.
But every time, so if there is long enough pause, I say if there was another speaker, I would say, हाँ चलो जो भी बोल रहे हैं
मैं देख लेता हूँ notification.
Quickly let me just swipe through a few reels.
Yes.
It is a huge time suck, and you know, as engineer, how many of you are engineering students?
Couple of them,
A
I'm
few,
sure.
a few of you. So
Yeah.
now I keep telling myself that let me gamify this system, right? I will not let Instagram use me, but I will use Instagram. That what I'll do is I'll do a lot of influencer stuff where I sell a lot of stuff on Instagram, okay? Shampoos and vacuum cleaners and whatnot. I have no qualms taking money from multinational companies. So I sell a lot of shit on Instagram. But I'm like, if I'm spending just 1 hour and getting to do this, why not?
Fair enough.
Why
All right.
not?
Cool.
But not more than 1 hour. Don't do it.
Okay. So quickly, because most of the audience here is all of them are students, and you started writing when you were 21. So how did that go? What was the inspiration at 21? How did you imagine yourself writing a book, and why?
So there are two things. The first one is that I grew up in a Bengali family, and in Bengalis there's a huge reading culture. So in my family, if you haven't read a book this week, there's a very high chance that you'll get judged. Why did you not read it? The book has come out, etc., etc. You should read the book. And I remember when even when the Harry Potter series came out, I was in, I think the first movie came out when I was in 11th, 12th, and Harry Potter at that point in time had become too childish for my family.
What do you say?
Yeah, they were like, Harry Potter थोड़ी पढ़ोगे तुम? At least Lord of the Rings. Like if you have to read fantasy, read Lord of the Rings. Don't read Harry Potter. Harry Potter is when you're in 5th standard or whatever. So that is the kind of reading culture that there was in my family. But having said that, my parents were extremely strict about academics. That, you know, read as many books as you can, but also be extremely like attuned towards scoring a lot of marks and getting into IIT. But my dad's an IITian, so he always wanted me to get into IIT. So go into IIT and do your IM thing and get an MBA. But reading fiction was also a huge part of my life. So what happens is when you read a lot of books, sometimes what happens is that you read really bad books as well.
True.
And when you read bad books, you think, ये तो मैं कर सकता हूँ. This is, and this happens with the. So a lot of people come up to me and they tell me that we have read your books, we are huge fans, and we are also writing because you have written. Now that's a double-edged sword because it's like saying that if you can write, I can write as well. I mean, this
I know
is
what you're
also a feeling that I got when I read one of your other guests, Chetan Bhagat. I was like, ki, first book I really liked. I was
Okay,
like,
which
when
one?
5 Point Someone.
Okay.
I read 5 Point Someone. I was like, yeah, this is one of the first Indian writers who's
Indianized literature, in a way.
Yeah, who's telling my story.
Yeah.
I mean, he was in IIT and I was in Delhi
Yeah.
College of Engineering, but I had a lot of friends in IIT, so I could connect with a lot of things. I was like, this has never happened to me before, that I read about a character and feel it doesn't matter what the English is, whatever. But I could feel that this is my story or this is the story of my friends. So I liked that book and I started writing immediately after that. If this is a book, I can
okay.
write as well. And then eventually I wrote a book. But I think that is what gave me the confidence that I read a lot and I was like, one book I can write. But I never thought of writing as a career because growing up you meet doctors, engineers, CAs, and they have all made a living. You never meet a writer who has made a living. I mean, even now when people come to my house, my wife's friends, and they look at me like I am a zoo animal. So what does he do the entire day? He writes books. I mean, it's a very sad thing to say, but one of the greatest things for me to make people understand what I do is the pandemic. Because I have been working from home for the last 15 years. Right? I get up, I do nothing but sit on a laptop and start working. So when the pandemic hit and everyone was home and they were all working from home, after that when people used to come and say, "Ki, what does Durjoy do?" I do exactly what you do. I sit at home and I stare at a laptop. So that
Yeah.
was one of the greatest things. So, but I never took writing seriously. Even so I've done my engineering, I've done my MBA. Right into my MBA when I was 26 and I had written 6 books, I did not consider myself as a writer. In fact, one of my biggest interviews, Procter and Gamble, which used to offer like a huge salary, they really wanted to hire me. And in the last round, they told me that, Durjoy, we want to take you, but we have seen the kind of books that you have written, and we feel that we'll invest in you, and then you leave our job and say that I'm going to follow my passion. And they did not take me. The next day, American Express, a very
Right.
good financial company, also came in, and I amended my CV to tell them that, okay, I'm not going to write books again. I've only written 1 book instead of like 5 or 6. And they said, yeah, this is okay. You are creative, but you are not like a bookish person.
Okay.
And they took me. So this is how unserious I was about writing. I knew that this is something that I can do. This is something that I can enjoy. And yeah, it was a part of my life. It wasn't my entire life.
So your Wikipedia says that you were born in Mehsana. Is that true? So do you have a Gujarat connection?
I do. I just बच्चे मायका में born होते हैं types वाला situation था. So my mother's family used to be in Mehsana. So
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I came here, and plus I've spent a lot of my summer vacations in Anand in that dairy sort of situation.
Okay,
So there
the
used to
Doodh
be
Sagar.
Yeah. So
The Sagar Dairy, I think, in
yeah.
Mehsana.
So they used to have this nice complex. I used to go there as
Yeah.
a kid and spend like 2 months there. So that's my Gujarat.
Nice. So, a couple of books that you've written, what's with the titles? I mean, of course, I love you till I find someone better. Yes, I'm single and so is my girlfriend. ये क्या है भाई? This is one more. You were my crush till you said you love me.
This has been one of the pain points. You know, whenever I go to a college and these kids, so kids generally form the student council and they go to their professors and they tell them that, okay, this is the speaker that we want in our college, and the professor asks them that, okay, what books has he written? And then they start saying these names aloud. They're like, we are not going to call anyone who has written "Of course I love you till I find someone better." But the story behind that is that when I wrote my first book, I was under, I really did not think that it would get published, because no one my age, I was 20, 21 when I finished my first book. No one my age was getting published. My achievement was that I had finished writing a book. For me, that was good enough. But since I had written the book, I sent it across to publishers, and the publisher that picked up my book was Srishti Publishers, where the publisher was a slightly older man, 60, 65, and he said that, we have this superstition that unless your title has 19 characters, your book is not going to work.
19 characters.
19 characters.
Okay.
So he was like, we have come out with this book called I don't know, Everyone Has a Love Story ... something.
Okay.
So I started counting 19 characters backwards. So let me just go cycle through titles that I can keep. One of them, which fit the 19 characters, was "Of Course I Love You ... exclamation mark.
Okay.
That is 19
19
characters.
characters. Okay.
Yeah. And then he was like, no, but there's another hitch. You also have to create a subtitle for the book.
Okay. So title ka chota sa ek title.
हाँ,
Dag
होना
the
चाहिए.
Fire.
हाँ, Dag the Fire. Exactly.
Okay.
So, and I was like, yeah, of course I love you till I find someone better. At that point in time, I was just, I just had gratitude that he's publishing my book. So whatever he tells me, I'm going to do.
Okay.
So I was like, of course I love you till I find someone better. छाप दो, मुझे फर्क नहीं पड़ता.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So, and in the first year, a lot of people bought the book because it was named so strangely. Of course I love you till I find someone better.
Of course.
And I was in college back then, so my publisher said that, okay, your book is selling a lot. और a lot what तो मुझे कुछ पता नहीं था कि कितना what is a lot, because it was not like he was giving me money, because in publishing what happens is that you get money once a year. So
Okay.
till the time the year ends, you don't know how the book is doing. So he was saying, yeah, the book is selling a lot and it's on some best selling list. मुझे लगा best selling list ना खरीदी जा सकती है. Like you can buy Taran Adarsh for good reviews. You can buy a best selling.
You can buy followers on Instagram.
Yeah, you can do that. So I was like, हाँ ये best selling list आपने खरीदी हुई है, क्या फर्क पड़ता है, etc. Then he was like, no, the book is really working, etc. And the book is working because of its title. And then he was like, write your second book and write it with a quirky title. और book में तुम कुछ भी लिख दो, कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता. Just keep a quirky title. So
Okay.
we decided the title first, which was Now That You're Rich, Let's Fall in Love.
Okay.
So we decided the title. I wrote the book, which is it is a very bad book. It is unreadable. If you ask me to read,
What are you saying?
It is just horrible. Have you read anyone?
I have read it,
You
but it
read
was
it?
a long time back. But yes, I have read it.
It's horrible. You must have been young, so you might have liked it.
I still am
it's-
young.
Same. But it was a horrible book. But just because it was named Now That You're Rich, Let's Fall in Love, a lot of people picked it again. But what eventually happened was that I became like a one-trick pony. That I'll have this same kind of writing style, same kind of title, same kind of subtitle, and the book will work. But it stopped happening after the 5th or the 6th book. So I had to change course.
So, did you have a muse when you started writing? Because usually when someone writes, and especially if it is romance, it is either a desire that the writer has in his mind, or a situation that the writer goes through. So, did you have a muse, a girlfriend, or I don't know, not a girlfriend, but a friend or someone?
So for the longest time, I did not know that I was a romance writer, because when I was growing up, all my reading choices were dictated by my parents.
Right.
So I remember that when I was in 9th standard, my parents started giving me Salman Rushdie to read. So it's pretty clear that I was not reading any romance growing up. When I wrote my first book was essentially about the experiences that I was having in my college, Delhi College of Engineering, and there was a central love story connecting it all. It was only after my first draft I sent it to the publisher said, oh, you're a romance writer. And I was like, I'm not a romance writer. Because, I mean, when you're younger, I think you just treat all your relationships like it's going to end. So I was of the same sort, that whatever relationship that I'm getting into is going to have, the book was titled, of course, I Love You Till I Find Someone Better.
Huh.
So I was like, whatever relationship I'm writing about in this book is going to end sooner or later. So this is not a romance book. This is an experience book. Like, what would an 18-year-old experience when he or she gets into college?
Right.
It was only later that my publisher told me, no, you are a romance writer.
Okay.
And this is how you should position yourself. So since that time, I have been slotted as a romance writer. I don't consider myself as a romance writer. I consider myself as a drama writer. So I've written a lot of television as well.
Yeah.
So when they first called me to write for television, I was like, this is exactly what I was waiting for. I mean, I don't know whether you guys know, but Sasural Se Marka, Nagin, shows like this, that is my space. If you ask me to put an extremely bizarre plot point in the middle of the story where the Bahu is turning into a Makhi, I can do that without blinking an eyelid. So I've always been a dramatic writer.
Okay.
It's just that when you're young and there are two characters in your books who are falling in love, it's easier to sell you as a romance writer. But
Hmm.
I don't consider myself.
So, but in real life, are you a person who's romantic, quote unquote, or are you someone who's क्या हाँ ठीक है चल रहा है?
I don't think that I am very romantic. I think in general guys are very unromantic, which I've realized very late.
Except for Shah Rukh Khan, maybe.
I mean, we don't look into Shah Rukh Khan's personal life to see how romantic he is, because all his romance is written by writers.
Yeah.
So what you see as Shah Rukh Khan is not Shah Rukh Khan, but whoever
His
is
character.
writing, whoever is writing for him. But I've realized this off late, that guys generally aren't that romantic or whatever. There's this, I mean, all this vocabulary. I was just talking to one of the volunteers yesterday, but all of this terminology about love languages did not exist when we were growing up. That, my love language is acts of service, or my love language is touch. I mean, in 2008, if you went up to any girl and said that, okay, my love language is touch, you will get slapped. But please have your love language. But but I think we are still in a flux. We are still defining what romance means, because especially with Indian men, masculinity is such a touchy topic that what does it, I mean, to be a masculine man and then being romantic as well is such a dichotomy that we are still trying to find a bridge, which only Shah Rukh Khan has sort of
Been able to crack it.
and not even Shah Rukh Khan has been able to crack it. If you see his interview about after Pathan,
Yeah.
he said that I was shocked that someone has given me an action movie because they don't see me as masculine enough
To pull it off.
to pull it off. So he was like, नहीं अभी थोड़ी देर में बोलेगा कि यहाँ पे गाना आएगा, but नहीं आया. So that is a bridge we are yet to cross. I would say that I'm decently, my love language, as they say, it keeps on changing. Earlier it was gifts and words of affirmation or whatever. Now it is acts of service. I mean, as a woman who gets married to a man and has kids, you do not want your man to be romantic. You want your man to be a good father, to take the load off you. For the first
No, ये थोड़ा समझने की ज़रूरत है. So you are saying that a woman doesn't want her partner to be romantic. बच्चे का भार थोड़ा थोड़ा संभाल लो, वो काफी है. Is that what you're saying?
So my last book was When I'm With You.
Okay.
Right. So When I'm With You is a story of a girl who loves kids, and who loves kids so much that she wants to have a nursery. She wants to start her own nursery and have her own child, and doesn't want to get married because she knows that men are essentially useless when it comes to raising kids. And this came from a personal experience that, so I had a kid. My elder daughter is 6 years old, and I have been at home for the entirety of 6 years. And I've realized that you cannot, a husband and a wife cannot raise kids unless at least one of them sacrifices their entire career.
True.
It,
In a way.
and it's usually the woman. Because we
Yeah.
get married in a way that the man earns more. So when it comes to the decision that, okay, who will sit at home, it's usually the woman. And Indian government also makes it easier for the women to sit at home, because once you have a kid, women have a 6-month compulsory maternity leave. Yeah, and men, it's optional. So so men sort of check out of the child rearing responsibilities very early, and they say things like "माँ तो माँ ही होती है," that we can't do it. Of course you can do it. I've done it twice now. There is there is no secret. There is nothing.
So there are no gender discriminations here, but माँ तो माँ ही होती है पर बाप बाप
It
होता है.
is absolute. I'll tell you something that this is too much information, but there are two things that are extremely, and this is just for the girls, which are extremely glorified. One is natural birth. That unless the woman goes through extreme pain, you're not a mother. So we sort of vilify C-sections. My wife has gone through 2 C-sections and she's absolutely fine. The children are absolutely fine. The second is breastfeeding. It is like बच्चा तो आपका बड़ा हो ही नहीं सकता जब तक आप breastfeed ना करो. His immunity will be like 0. If COVID happens, he'll be the first one to get COVID. Absolute nonsense. I'll tell you a secret, that formula-fed babies come out to be healthier because they drink a lot.
Okay.
They gain weight quicker, they have not higher immunity, but they are able to sort of fight off early diseases because they are healthier babies. And it divides the load between the wife and the, because if your baby is getting breastfed, as a guy I can say, मैं जा रहा हूँ सोने. I can't do this. I am not
Yeah.
lactating. You are lactating. Please go ahead. So it's become a crutch for a lot of men to check out of child rearing. And see, if you don't do this in the first 6 months, you will never do it.
Okay.
All of the attachment that the baby has towards, I don't know how we got into all of this. this
हाँ, हम
conversation.
फादरहुड पे आ गए, हम
हाँ.
रोमांस पे थे, तो
हाँ,
बीच
so-
का पूरा एक फेज जंप कर लिया हमने. सीधे पहले रोमांस किया, फिर सीधा बच्चा आ गया. तो
Yeah, true. True. Yeah. So I wrote this book because I saw a lot of guys. So when a lot of friends used to come home with when we have all kids of the same age, what used to happen is that all the guys used to congregate outside with a drink, and all the girls used to hang out in the kids' room with all their kids playing.
Yeah.
And they are like just overlooking कि हाँ कोई fork उसमें socket में तो नहीं डाल रहा.
yeah.
कोई बॉल तो नहीं
Taking
निकल
care of the
रहा.
kids, basically.
I mean, just making sure that they are alive. And my wife used to be so frustrated because I was the only one who's staying at home and taking care of the kids, etc. And she used to be like, कुछ सीखो दूर जाओ ऐसे. मैंने कहा नजर मत लगाओ. But a lot of guys check out of this, and women have an incredibly frustrating time in the first 4 or 5 years of your life, because the guy who has not stayed at home for the first 6 years has not been through the most frustrating time. So it was like तुम करो ना, तुम्हारी बात सुनता है मेरी बात नहीं सुनता, right? And they have already taken a step back in their career because all their peers, all the guys who they joined with have gone ahead in life. They had like a 6 month, 1 year gap, and even when they join work, they're constantly thinking मेरा बच्चा क्या कर रहा है, मेरा बच्चा क्या कर रहा है, मेरा बच्चा क्या स्कूल से आया क्या वापस, मेड ने किया या नहीं किया, मैं CCTV पे देख लेती हूँ क्या कर रहा है. Whereas men don't have this thing. What do men do? तुम मुझे बताओ कि मेड ने कुछ किया या नहीं किया, मैं आके उसकी क्लास लेता हूँ. But I am not obsessed with the well-being of my child. So I think a lot of romance gets sort of converted into how much can you contribute, at least when your child is young. Which is not to say that romance should not exist, but romance can only exist when your wife is not a walking, talking grocery list. I mean, you have to give her free time to think about herself, to be a better person, or not a better person, but more a person who's other than a mother. And I think it's so ठीक है मतलब there's a lot of talk about feminism etc. And it's become a vilified word because to give women rights means that you'll have to give up your rights, which is slightly uncomfortable. And I have been uncomfortable in that situation as well. But if you incentivize the process, it's better. कि आपको क्या फ़ायदा हो रहा है? So when my wife lost her job, I was the most scared person because मुझे लगा अब पूरे घर के पैसे मुझे कमाने पड़ेंगे. I don't want this responsibility, so I pushed her that please find another career. If you look at it from that point of view, that okay, would you spend 5 more hours at the office listening to your boss? Or would you tell your wife that, okay, you also work, you also go out and be the most successful version of yourself, and I'll spend 3 hours with the kid? What would you pick? The answer is it's obvious.
Yeah.
So you can make it work in your, when I'm with you, I wrote this book because I wanted to tell a lot of young women that do not get married to hot men. Okay,
What?
Get married to men who have younger siblings, because only men who have very young siblings, say maybe the difference is like 6-7 years, they have like training
Of taking care of
of
someone
taking
else.
care of someone else. I mean,
Fair point.
the guy already has a mother. You don't have to mother the guy and the child. So be a partner and get, yeah. So the entire premise of When I'm With You was, please don't have kids if you are getting married to an extremely masculine man.
Okay. So now let's come back from parenthood and fatherhood to romance. तो यहाँ से वापस उठ के यहाँ आ जाते हैं हम. So when you write romance, or when you think of romance, do you think it has any realism attached to it, or do you think it's just the fantasy world जहाँ पर ला 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 गाने वाने चल रहे हैं? रोमांस क्या होता है? उसमें कुछ रियलिज्म भी होता है या वो सिर्फ एक सपनों की दुनिया है?
I mean, then we have to start off with what is realism.
Okay.
I mean, what everything around us is make believe, right? So in engineering terms, a lot of people talk about merit. That merit से college में घुसना चाहिए, reservation नहीं होना चाहिए, etc. etc. I'm going at it from a different point of view. But then I always come at this conclusion that how many kids in my class who were in my engineering college or in my MBA are actually making a difference in the world? Very few.
Okay.
If ऐसा भी हो सकता है कोई भी नहीं कर रहा, सब क्या कर रहे हैं? कोई टूथपेस्ट बेच रहा है, कोई क्रेडिट कार्ड बेच रहा है. Some people are financial analysts, which is just moving money around. So none of their jobs are meaningful.
Okay.
In the larger sense of the world, unless you are someone visionary, say Elon Musk, despite his behavioral antics, you're not changing the world. जो भी तुम काम कर रहे हो ना, वो make believe ही है कि तुम्हारे टूथपेस्ट में salt नहीं है, but you are creating a marketing campaign that tells people that there is salt in your toothpaste and that's why you should get it. Your job in itself is meaningless. So everything that we money, like say I'm not from this country, right? You tell me that ये 20,000 रुपए का नोट है, and I'm from Europe. I will say 20,000 रुपए has no meaning for me.
Right.
It's just a piece of paper because I spend in euros. So that realism shift is always there. So love is one of those things. It's one of these things that we have chosen to believe in. कि प्यार होता है. So this is a conversation that so a lot of my friends are divorced, and I think divorce is the second best thing that can happen to a love story. First is that you spend the rest of your life together. The second is divorce. So I think second best is not that bad. I mean, if I say if in a class you'll come second best, you'll say, I'll take second best. So when they get divorced, they are saying the institution of marriage is useless, and slowly and steadily people will realize it and they will not get married. And these are all people, and people get, I mean, in the US, 1 in 2 people get divorced. And these are people who have given, in India, who have given entrance examination. And I said that you gave an IIT examination. What did you think your success percentage will be? There is only a 2% chance that you will succeed. And yet you gave that exam. Marriage and love is a little bit like that. There is a 50% chance that you will succeed in love and in when you get married. Of course you will do it. Why will we are a nation of people who give UPSC exam with a success percentage of 0.1% for 7 years in a row. Why would we not give love a chance? It's very easy to believe in because it's also a very warm, fuzzy emotion. So I don't think I can't say that how real it is, but it feels real to us. I mean, whenever you have a crush on someone, whenever you go on a first date, the butterflies that you feel in your stomach is not something imagined. It's a real physical feeling, and you can't get over it. You can't say कि ये मैं झूठ feel कर रहा हूँ. You can't do that.
No, I agree. But then how do you differentiate कि क्रश क्या है और प्यार क्या है? क्योंकि बहुत सारी बार समझ में ही नहीं आता कि कયું છે. So how do you differentiate? What is love and what is a crush?
I mean, the honest answer will be that you can believe that it's love and it will not be, because love itself changes a lot. Only yesterday my wife and I were talking about our relationship. It's been years and years, and she was like, if I had met Durjoy of today, I would not have fallen in love with him because he is a different person. But Avantika of today would not have fallen in love with the Durjoy of the past. So love is not like a static feeling, or it's not a noun. It's a verb that I love you at this moment. It might change tomorrow, depending on whether you change or not. I think most of the problems arise when we think that, okay, now we have fallen in love, and this is like this monolith, it's never going to change. So this is a line from my book as well, that love is not a past occurrence, it's a present continuous term. That I still love you, and I love you in the next moment as well, and I love you in the next moment as well. So it's slightly unreasonable to expect that it would be static, and the intensity of your love will remain the same.
But you've made it even more complicated कि क्रश और लव को डिफरेंशिएट कैसे करना है भाई. थोड़ा टिप दे दो तो बहुत सारे लोगों की मदद हो जाएगी यहाँ पे.
क्रश तो बहुत होते हैं.
हाँ.
क्रश तो
Can crush happen with multiple at the same time? Can I have crush at 4 or 5 people? ये पूछ लेने दो भाई काम की बात.
So one of my longest crushes lasted from 6th standard to I think 1st year of college.
भाई साहब ये मंजे हुए खिलाड़ी हैं ये.
And it was an all-consuming, and I had never talked to the girl. In these like 7 years, I never talked to the girl ever. She was in my class, but I never talked to her. But it was crush to the depths of that. I used to think that when she started dating someone else, I was like, 5 years down the line, she will come back as a battered, abused housewife with 2 kids, and I'll accept her and say that okay, your kids can call me Papa, it's okay. So it was a crush to those depths.
Yeah.
But with that, I also fell in love with a few other people.
Good. So how has your experience been as a screenwriter or as a different format?
So screenwriting is an entirely different beast. I genuinely, before I started writing for screen, you have seen how Indian television is, right? Not OTT, Indian television is pretty dumb, right? So when I used to watch Indian TV shows, I used to think that there are no writers behind this thing because writers cannot write something so dumb. I used to think that the directors used to like huddle around with actors and he used to say that tum ye bol do, tum ye bol do, and that's the scene. When I was called to write the first TV show, I was kind of pleasantly surprised that they are writers and they get paid for it. But what happened was that I was writing books since then, and writing books is an extremely solitary process. Till the time you finish writing a book, no one's going to give you feedback. But when it comes in television, every episode that you write will be judged by the actors, the directors, the producer, the channel.
And eventually the TRP.
Eventually, every Thursday used to be TRPs, and TRPs is an incredible thing. I mean, you just think of TRPs as ki haan, it's numbers. But TRPs, you get TRPs in television that we used to get that okay, from minute 15 to 18, a lot of people really started tuning in. So all the channel people started to look at what happened from 15 to 18. So 15 से 18 के बीच में the actress changed into a green sari. So this is what's working. So let's put our character in a green sari for the entirety of the next episode. So this is the minutiae of how an episode is sort of constructed. So we writers were at the brunt of it because you can't write a television show for long. What happens is that every Thursday the TRPs come in and they say that okay, now we need to change the story. Because in some other show, the groom has turned into a gorilla. So now what animal can we get in our show? One of the most successful shows, and it's a show that I have auditioned for, is Nagin. Nagin, yeah.
Okay.
So when I wrote a sample episode for Nagin, I suspended my disbelief and wrote the most random shit I could write. And they said, this is too believable. So yeah, I mean, but writing for television is a dynamic process because you are interacting with so many people and you get so many point of views. And so one good thing about television is, say, for a show like, say, Tarak Mehta, or a show like Di Aur Baati Hum, or Kyunki Saas Bhi Kabhi Bahu Thi, these shows have been going around for 1200, 1300 episodes.
Yeah.
The only reason why they sustained is because they established very good characters when they set out writing the show.
That's true.
So that is one of the learnings that I have learned from television writings, that if you have a good character, then you can make them do anything. And yeah, that's what I've learned.
So since we're talking about romance and novels and books, and since all of us are adults here, I mean, erotica is a genre that exists in other languages, especially in English. But when we talk of Indian English or literature in India, I don't know if erotica exists now. I'm not talking of the Khajuraho era. But now, does it exist? If yes, where is it? If no, why not? अगर रोमांस है तो इरोटिका तो इवेंचुअली आएगा ही.
I'm just thinking of how to answer that question because for the first 5 books, I was tagged as this horny writer who just keeps writing intimate scenes. No, this is the truth. So, of course, I love you. Now that you're rich, she broke up, I didn't, and a couple of books after that. So there was this entire period where literary people were trying to figure out that why does Durjoy sell a lot of books. So there were a bunch of reasons. One reason was that he has a title and a quirky subtitle. The other reason was that he writes a lot of intimate scenes. It doesn't matter whether they were well written or not, but they were there, right? Because I was also young and it used to be a huge part of my psyche, if not my life. I need to write about this, right? So they figured out that this is one of the reasons that he's selling, because he's selling smut or erotica. But by the time I came to my 6th book, which was Till the Last Breath, it got to me. I was like, okay, these cannot be the only reasons why I'm selling. it cannot be this that I'm only selling because I'm writing about college students. It cannot be that the only reason I'm selling is because I have a title and a subtitle, and it cannot be the only reason because my characters make out a lot during the story. So I got really offended and I wrote this book called Till the Last Breath, which is not set in a college. It's about older characters. There is no subtitle, and there is no erotica or intimacy in the books, and the books worked. And when I answered that question that I could sell without my characters getting intimate, I leaned into it and said that from now on I am not going to do it at all.
Okay.
For the next 10-12 books I kept away from it, till the time I realized that this is, by not doing it, I'm making it a taboo. That I'm trying to establish a nice boy thing, that okay, this doesn't happen, or if it happens, it's a footnote at the end of a chapter. So I think my experience with erotica in my books has been very reader influenced or critic influenced. But I think other reason why it's not very popular in India is because you need to be a certain kind of person to write erotica. I mean, most of us cannot write erotica and go to our parents and say that I have written erotica.
I know what you're saying.
So you have to be at least in your 40s when your parents don't care about what you do, and then you can say, okay, now I'm writing erotica. So that's I think one of the reasons why, because it's still embarrassing for me. I mean, my parents read all my books,
Yeah.
and I do not think about anything else. I do not think about the craft or what story am I telling or whether it's hitting them. I'm just thinking what will happen when they reach page 152. Please quit the book before they
Yeah.
read that page.
Great. So my last question, and on a lighter note, Durjoy, so you say that the quirky title and the way you describe the story and the characters, relatability and all of that, but does it also help to sell books if you're good looking and charming like you? Let him answer that.
I mean, I've always been told that.
Okay.
But if you go back in time and see my first picture in my first book,
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that was not selling books. But okay, so this is how I'll tackle this. So a lot of people have asked me, so I have like 800, 900K people on Instagram. I do not aim to acquire new readers. I'm like, ये जो तुम 800K follow कर रहे हो ना, और ये जो तुम कह रहे हो कि हाँ this video is cute, this picture is cute, just go and buy my book. I will not have to acquire one more reader for the rest of my life if everyone who follows me on Instagram just buys my book. So, given a choice, would I be in a position that I can leverage my personality to sell books versus a world where there's no Instagram and people have to go to bookstores and pick up random books? I would pick the latter, because that's how I sold my first book. When I sold my first book, there was no social media. What happened was people went to a bookstore, they saw the title of the book, they bought it, they liked it, and they recommended it to other friends. Now what happens is that even if I acquire a new reader, they will read it, they'll recommend it to a new friend, they'll follow my Instagram profile, they're like, सब कुछ पता लग तो रहा है इसके Instagram profile से, book खरीदने की क्या ज़रूरत है? So I would pick the earlier universe where there's no social media.
All right. So a couple of quick fire questions for you now, Durjoy. You will not have time to think. You just have to say whatever comes to your mind first. Okay. So if I ask you movie theater or streaming, what would you pick? Movie theater or streaming? OTT.
Streaming.
Streaming. Okay. Road trip or air travel?
Air travel, hate to drive.
Beach or mountain?
Beach.
Okay. Tinder or Bumble?
Came after I was married.
Fiction or non-fiction?
Fiction.
The first thing that comes to your mind when I say your favorite book?
Room on the Roof. First book I ever read.
Your favorite author?
Stephen King in the longer run, yeah, maybe.
Okay. Romance or thriller?
Thriller.
The first name that comes to your mind when I say your favorite actor?
Ranveer Singh, maybe?
Okay. Okay. Action or adventure?
None for me, but I mean, adventure.
The first thing that comes to your mind when I say X?
I will find the value of X in this equation.
Smart. The first thing that comes to your mind when I say romance?
Keeps changing.
The first thing that comes to your mind when I say one night stand?
Used to be so used to be not commonplace when I was growing up.
It is now. The first thing that comes to your mind when I say IIMUN?
Smart people.
The first thing that comes to your mind when I say VLF, Vadodara Literature Festival?
Should happen a lot more often.
All right, last two words. The first thing that comes to your mind when I say hookup?
A necessary step to a relationship.
Okay, first thing that comes to your mind when I say breakup?
A necessary step in trying to know yourself.
Okay, last. The first thing that comes to your mind when I say world's best boyfriend? That's one of his books, by the way.
I don't think anyone has got that title as of now.
All right, give it up for Durjoy Datta, ladies and gentlemen. What an entertaining session. Thank you so much for being here, Durjoy. And we can have some questions from the audience now. All right, we're really short of time, so we can have just one or two. Can we circulate the mic? There's one question here. Okay.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, sir. I am Nilima Haldar. আর আমি সত্যি তোমাকে খুব ভালোবাসি। So actually, okay. So actually, today I feel like my true fangirl moment came true because I am reading your book since 2013, and one of my favorite book is If It's Not Forever, It's Not Love. So actually, I'm thrilled to be standing here. So I also have one question for you. So my question for you is, you have a large number of young adult followers. Okay, you have a large number of young adult followers. So how do you approach writing for them, and what do you think your stories will teach them?
Okay, so there are two parts to this question. That I'll take the second part. That what do I aim to teach them? I don't aim to teach them anything, because so very early in my career, I was asked by a very angry woman that whose child has just read my book, that what are you aiming to teach them, and same question but in a different tone. I was like, I'm just telling a story, that this is just a story about two characters, and this is like what happens in their lives. I'm not trying to impart any knowledge, right? So I'm not trying to be like an inspiration to them, that this is what your life should look like, or this is what you should learn from the book, this is the moral of the story, etc. I don't aim to do all of that. I just aim to tell an interesting story. Having said that, I've written books that are about social issues, right? Say The Boy with the Broken Heart or The Boy Who Loved were about social issues, but to me they are interesting stories first, and then a social commentary on what's going on in the country. So teaching is not in the top of my mind. Secondly, I also I have stopped thinking about who's reading my books, because after my 5th or the 6th book, I tried reconstructing my earlier success and write a book that would be extremely successful. So there's this book called You Were My Crush Till You Said You Love Me. I did not want to write that book, but my publisher told me that what you need to do is go back to the first 5 books and figure out what worked, and then write a book on that formula. So I spent an entire year of my life trying to read my old books and try to figure out that, okay, these are the elements that are working and I'll write this book that will work. And it did not work. I was like, now I have to stop worrying about what my audience wants and write the book that I would want to read. So,
I get a
yeah.
reply back of আমি তোমাকে ভালোবাসি.
আমি তোমাকে ভালোবাসি, thank you.
Thank you.
What is this Bengali Gujarati thing happening here? Ami tumake bhalobashi. Kya hai usme problem? All right, we can have one last question. Here.
Here.
Bhai, aage.
Hello, sir. First, welcome to Parul University. My name is Mansi Patel. Very first attempt I am doing to write a book. A part of it I have done it also. I am writing in a Marathi language. Sometime I get stuck up, and the gap is almost a month or more. How to deal with this?
The writer's block.
Okay, so I don't have an exact solution for you, but I think a lot of times now I don't get that question that often, but I used to get this question that why do so many engineers turn up to be writers, or why do so many management graduates end up being writers? One part of it is that you do engineering and you do MBA because your parents are asking you to do it, and then you eventually figure out that, okay, I want to tell a story, and you write a book. The other part of it is that why do engineers and MBAs, they manage to finish their books? It's not because they have the best ideas, it's because they have the discipline. So there's a quote that says that perfection is the enemy of good. You don't have to be perfect. Whatever you are thinking, even if it's like the worst idea in the world, just write it down.
Okay.
Because there are plenty of days that I come back to my book and see that whatever I've written the previous day, it's absolute nonsense, but there is one sentence that makes sense. So at least I've written something, at least I've made progress, and at least I know of a direction that I don't want to go in.
Yes.
The minute you stop is when you get stuck. I was just listening to this podcast from another writer, he's called Chandra Haas. He was like, he has written multiple books, and he says the best time to start a book is when you have finished writing the last one. What he meant to say is that it's more of a habit than a good idea. The minute you stop one day, you'll think, acha, I have spent the entire of last day thinking of a good idea, I could not get it. So now not only I have to beat the previous, the day, day before yesterday, but also yesterday. So I have to come up with a brilliant idea because I have taken a break. So just go ahead and write whatever comes to your mind. You can always come back and delete it, but at least you would have made some progress.